The bountiful ambassador settled gently on a landing pad, clamps securely holding the ship as the pad retreated within the bulk of New Halifax. Ged waited for the ship to be secure before rising from his seat. As the landing pad moved into the docks, he composed a quick message. "Hi, Angel. I have just arrived. Where did you want to meet?" Sending the message as the landing control confirmed he was docked. Making his way to a body and out of the ship, he didn't wait for a response, heading for the tram to the inner city. As the tram left the docks, he could see protesters, placards and banners with slogans aimed at the UNS. Venus for Venusians and UNS out were the most common. The tram soon took him out of sight, then out of earshot, though the entire city was clearly tense. People walking in huddled groups. Ged opened a newsfeed in his HUD, taking in the events of recent weeks. The nurses that were murdered, a side story. The main story was about a recent incident between a UNS cargo ship and a Kraken. The cargo ship deliberately ramming and killing the Kraken, then making a suicide run at a Kraken outpost. The attack failed, the outpost defenses destroying the ship before it hit. 3 other fatal attacks against Kraken followed the main story, all in the last 2 days. The news finally got around to the nurses, mentioning another murder yesterday. The nurse's statement was as useless as the others, a faceless polyplastic creature filleting her as she walked home. The tram stopped a half-dozen times as he watched the feed. Even beyond the attacks on Kraken and nurses, the news reported several assaults of Hearth citizens visiting the UNS cities. The entire planet was on the edge. The city centre stop arrived, more than half the passengers disembarking. Ged slipped off as the last of his fellow passengers did. Even the city centre was quiet, its theatres and bars experiencing a slump in attendance. Ged made his way to the Stars of Venus bar, its interior decorated with props and pictures of famous films and actors from the city's mighty film industry. After ordering food and tea, he returned to the news, looking at all the reported deaths of nurses in the city. They started 10 days ago. Each was backed up, all with streaming backups, so they had clear memories of the attack and attacker, the same faceless monster in each case. He had been reading for 20 minutes when Angel called. "Hi, Ged. Nice to see you again, Angel. Thanks so much for coming. I'm at work now, but I can meet you somewhere after." "When do you finish?" "About 4 hours from now." Ged considered for a moment before replying. "Can I meet you and any of the nurses that were attacked somewhere? Maybe your regular bar?" "Sure, I'll send you the details. There will probably be a few of us coming, okay?" "I will meet you then. Bye." Angel ended the call, the address of the bar arriving moments later. It was not far away, walking distance, so he enjoyed his meal as much as he could. Its printed meat was not to his taste. The news pictured a few of the attack sites, so he planned a route, aiming to visit all of them before going to meet the nurses. As soon as he finished, Ged began his journey. It would take too long to walk the route, so several tram rides were necessary. Each location was a residential street, police drones monitoring the area. The only other common feature was how quiet the streets were. Little help for locating the attacker. The last tram ride was back into the city centre, stopping near the meeting point, a bar called Mal du Taverne, not far from the ambulance dispatch. As he reached the doors, 2 paramedics entered, Ged stepping through the door before it closed. More than half the patrons were in uniform, Most were hospital staff of one sort or another, though a couple of police officers were here as well. Angel was sitting at a booth with 3 others, all dressed in civilian clothing. As soon as she spotted him, she stood and waved, prompting Ged to head for the group. "Hi, Ged. This is Harriet, Kiki, and Roman. They were all attacked and are willing to talk to you." Angel guided him to a seat and pushed a menu in front of him. "On me." Ged ordered and turned his attention to the 3 nurses. "Thank you for—" The sound of an explosion cut him off. Everyone in the bar switching to news feeds. Reports were just coming in. A ship had crashed into the north side docks. Video of smoke and fire ravaging the area. Pandemonium erupted in the bar, panicked patrons making for the doors. As he looked on, a message from Miss Lily dropped into his inbox. "Ged, you need to get off Venus as soon as you can. It's all about to begin." The cryptic message sent a chill down his back, fur rising and whiskers flat. "Angel, we need to get off planet now." Grabbing her hand and making for the exit, he wasn't going to wait for anything. Angel waving for others to follow. Aisha was getting tired. The outer edges of the city in sight. The gravity was almost at Venus standard, 9 meters a second and climbing. Her legs and head ached, but the beautiful groves of lily willows were a fitting reward for her efforts. The peculiar trees were unique to Mauritius Lake City, their lily-pad leaves adorning the draping willow branches. Making her way to a bench and slumping into it, she took in the view. The steep angle of the city ring was such that the starry sky lay behind the trees, glimmering through the branches as they swayed in the breeze. Only the high gravity limited her enjoyment of the scene. It was difficult to feel rested here, so she was soon back to her feet, making the return journey to the hotel. It would take an hour to get back, but the gravity would steadily decline. A few minutes into the walk, she was feeling much better. The gravity below 7 meters a second. She was pleased by her progress. The cool evening air was refreshing, so much so that she decided to stop at an outdoor cafe, enjoy a well-earned meal. By the time she left the cafe, it was late and her training had left her exhausted, so she called a cab, soon landing on the street and allowing her aboard. Once it was in the air, only lunar gravity was upon her, almost like floating on a cushion of velvet. Aisha began to doze off. There were only a few moments of sleep before the cab shuddered violently, its usual voice replaced by a different, twisted one. "They must die!" The cab screamed, lunging toward the ground and a cluster of kraken in the main square. Aisha woke suddenly, surrounded by debris and remains. The cab had crashed into the ground, crushing 2 kraken and injuring several more. Her left arm was pinned under the cab and her legs broken, black blood pooling around her. The sound of sirens was fast approaching, cries and screams being drowned out by their reassuring wail. Aisha was not going to wait for them. With her free hand, she grabbed some of the glass and cut her left arm away, allowing her to reach her legs and twist them back into shape, bone rapidly knitting together, though her blue silk clothing was ruined. Stains of the kraken's red blood and her black blood covered much of the delicate patterns. Pulling herself to her feet, a paramedic rushed over, offering a hand back to the ambulance. With a nod, he supported her as they walked. Kent struggled under Carla's weight, but she was holding him fast. He smiled as she frowned, the headset unable to upload him through the shielding. "Nathan, I need the stunner," she called, a teenage boy soon rushing over with it, prompting him to struggle harder. Nathan jammed the device into his neck, quickly eliminating his thrashing and forcing him to unconsciousness. Climbing off him and brushing herself down, she checked the bounty listing to see if he was an analog, but there was no mention of it. "We need to take him to the bounty's office. I think he's shielded or something." Carla grabbed the unconscious body and began dragging him to the RV. Nathan taking the other end, they soon had him in a body tank. Ordering the RV to the office, Carla went for a shower, get the trash out of her fur. Getting hit by a bin hadn't been the highlight of her week, but Nathan was becoming a skilled assistant, so the value of bounties was growing. A good thing too, as much of Nathan's share is spent on Rudolph and Drew's refuge. By the time she was clean and dressed, the RV had been landed for a little while, Nathan having left to buy snacks and comics, so she loaded Kent onto a dolly before heading out. It didn't take long to deal with him, handing him over in person and collecting the bounty. She sent Nathan and Miss Lily their shares and started back for the RV. A commotion on a side street drew her attention, someone screaming for the police. As she rounded the corner, she was confronted by a man with a fire axe. Just behind him, a dead kraken and fleeing civilians. With a moment of confusion on his face, he raised the axe. "You!" Arissa felt darkness recede, slowly retreating from his body. His chest first, then bit by bit, his arms and legs. The floor was next, smooth as glass, its black oil surface reflecting his naked form. As the darkness reached the walls, it revealed yet more reflections, each on a shiny black surface. The ceiling was last, another reflection staring back at him. Beyond each of his reflections were more, an infinite reflection of Arissa on every side. Every image of him a reminder of what he had seen, what he had heard. Hoisting himself to his feet, Arissa launched at a wall, slamming into the surface as though he had run into a steel bulkhead. A shock of pain rushing through him, passing a moment later. There was never any physical pain in the clinic. Its walls were soft. This was not the clinic, nor was it the real world. The memory of a woman flooded back, dragging him into this dark place with a smile. He didn't know what she wanted, or where she was, but this place was clearly hers. This prison was made just for him. Every cell was his. Slumping into a corner, he muttered, "She must be a Kraken or one of their allies. They wanted retribution." Within moments, he was back to his feet, screaming curses at his hidden jailer. He could hear his own voice, but it was being reflected as well. Every image of him screaming back. The noise quickly growing to an overwhelming din, forcing him to cover his ears. His silence was silence. Every reflection muting at that moment, returning to the perfect and undisturbed quiet. Pacing back and forth, mumbling to himself, he considered what to do. He couldn't see the skies. He couldn't warn anyone of the Kraken. Realization struck him. This was the sign. The Kraken were attacking right now. That's why they wanted him out of the way, so that no one would know. Looking to the ceiling, his own reflection looked back. He almost smiled at his revelation. Were it not so terrifying, he may have even laughed. The moment passed, and his eyes dropped to the floor, his own reflection looking up at him. Beyond it, an infinite string of pears standing on the feet of their partner. As he looked upon his infinite self, he began to imagine the conflict going on. The Kraken will have taken the fight straight to the Earth, the seat of the UNS. Millions would die in the first minutes. He imagined the carnage and destruction, monstrous matriarchs striding across the land, buildings crumbling in their wake. Trapped in his box, he was powerless to help. None would even remember him once the Kraken were done. A forgotten warrior of a long-lost age. Suddenly, there was light beyond his immediate reflection, a dozen down. One of the images was out of time with the rest, backing to a corner as a giant hand reached into the cell. Arissa spun round, expecting to see the hand reaching for him. But his own cell was the same. They all were. All but the one below. Looking back, the cell was dark and empty now. But the panicked reflections around him made the noise grow to a din. As soon as it reached a roar, it was silence once more. For a few moments it was still, then the light returned. To his left, 20 or so reflections along. The shining hand of some unseen giant reached for Arissa's reflection, grabbing him like a toy and hoisting him into whatever lay beyond. The cell became dark. No reflections beyond it could be seen, but glancing down, he realized the first box was no longer dark, just a cell with another reflection, replaced already. How could he have not noticed? When did it happen? Or is this what madness feels like? The hand returned again, this time taking a reflection only 2 cells away. Then again, a dozen reflections beyond. Each time the cell would turn dark. When he wasn't looking, the cell would reveal another reflection. He wondered where they were going, what happened to them. Arissa looked on as the hand returned again and again. Dozens of times it came, sometimes close, sometimes so far that he hardly noticed. Panic grew as he considered his reflections. They were being taken for some purpose. Were they real? Was he real? Light bathed his cell. Spinning to face the ceiling, he could see the hand reaching out for him. He screamed at it, but his reflections looked on in silence, no longer mirroring his every move. As the hand gripped his entire body, only his head poked beyond its index finger. He trembled with fear, closing his eyes and wishing he was anywhere else. As though some genie had heard him, the sensation of the hand vanished. He could feel clothes against his skin, floor under his feet, the sweet metallic air of reality. Arissa's eyes snapped open. He was standing on the bridge of a ship, the UNS colours and logo decorating the floor, a crew of 3 surrounding him. Arissa was in the body of a UNS captain, not a panhuman, but flesh, the faint ache in his shoulder confirming the fragile nature of reality. The main view was showing the dense clouds of Venus. He knew them well, but within the clouds he could see shapes. It took a moment for him to realize what they were. A group of 6 kraken were moving past the ship. The enemy of humanity. Their arrogance made him fume. "Open fire!" he yelled at the top of his lungs, pointing at the kraken beyond. The gunner looked confused and began to ask for confirmation. Orissa did not wait, pushing the gunner aside and taking matters into his own hands. The echo of the cannons boomed through the ship, their streaks racing toward their targets. They never knew what hit them. Orissa laughed as the kraken was struck, each one torn apart by the barrage of fire. It was glorious to watch. The crew leapt for him, knocking him to the ground as he proclaimed, "They're coming! The kraken will kill us all!"